Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new video for this deck profile and expanded. Today we're talking about Meloetta Genesect, one of the meta decks sort of in expanded. Once again, I always clarify that my lists are not perfect. I will state when my lists are like super tested. I've only done maybe like 100 games with this deck, and I built this deck before really anyone else was playing Meloetta Genesect. I built this back in like December, I believe, of like really short after the release of Fusion Strikes. Almost no one was playing Meloetta Genesect, everyone was playing Mew back then. So this list is like not influenced by other lists so much as it's just my original list with a few changes that I kind of came across along the way. If you'd like to, obviously build a deck yourself, you can build it differently. There's things you could do, things you couldn't do. Anyway, we're going to get into the list. This deck is based around using the Melodious Echo attack to 70 for each Fusion Strike energy attached to all of your Pokemon. It is one of the best decks in Expanded right now because it can very easily do anywhere from like 210 to like 300 damage on turn 1 very consistently. And how do you get that consistency? Because you have the Fusion Strike engine. Obviously we have Meloetta here with 90 HP. Melodious Echo is the attack. One retreat's nice in a pinch. What you're using it for is because we're using Genesect to draw also a Fusion Strike Pokemon. I did invest in these alternate arts because I love those and I want those for my decks. Once during your turn, you may draw cards into your hand as many as you have Fusion Strike Pokemon in play. So if you have a full bench of 6, for instance, of Fusion Strike Pokemon, you draw 6. If you have like 4 Fusion Strike Pokemon in play, you draw until you have 4 in your hand. It's also got an attack. I've used it before. 2 metal, 1 colorless, which Fusion Strike covers any energy, so don't worry about it. 210 during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. So it's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the best draw Pokemon ever printed. Like I said, you can attack with it. You're not going to do that most of the time. 2 retreat is a pain, so we do play Float Stone. You'll get there eventually. The resistance is nice. I have lived hits because opponents didn't account for the resistance on Genesect. 190 HP is incredibly low for a V, but it's not really needed. We have 3 copies of Elesa Sparkle here. Choose up to 2 of your Fusion Strike Pokemon and then search your deck for a Fusion Strike energy and attach it to that Pokemon. So use this to accelerate your Fusion Strike energies in play. You've probably played against Meloetta before, so I'm going to keep some of these a little bit shorter, but 3 count's definitely right on this. I have not felt bad about that. I would not run 4. You never need 4. This deck does play Verse Seekers. You see some lists do not. If you're not playing Verse Seeker in your Meloetta list, I think you're throwing. 3 Elesa Sparkle works pretty good. 2 copies of Guzma, switch one of your opponent's bench with their active, and then you switch your active with one of your bench. So you can use this to get Genesect out of the active. Most of the time, you're just going to be picking off whatever you want on the bench. So you're going to get all your energy in play, and then you're going to Guzma and hit something really hard and probably take a lot of prizes for it. So Guzma's good. 2 copies works really well with the 3 copies of Verse Seeker. It's the most tutorable supporter with Verse Seeker in this deck. But you do want 2 copies, so you don't prize 1. I wouldn't go any more than 2 copies, though. 1 copy of Pokemon Ranger. Remove all effects on each player and his or her Pokemon. This is only used for ADPD. I have used it for Item Lock before, but Item Lock's really not a big deal because you just punch through them. You want to use this for ADP Dragonite and their Altered Creation. ADP Dragonite's arguably the best deck in Expanded right now. Some people would disagree and say it's Shadow Rider or Giratina Garchomp, any of those, but I think it's probably the most consistent deck since it only needs a tag call to guarantee like anything in its deck. Tag call guarantees it, turn 1 going second, Altered Creation, tag call guarantees it, like turn 2 attack, things like that. So Ranger is quite good though for countering that. Most of the time I don't advocate for playing Ranger in decks where you're not going to beat ADP Dragonite, but this deck has a very favorable matchup against ADP Dragonite with the Ranger in there. Even if they go second, you can blow up an ADP on your second turn going first. You can do 280 pretty easily. Ranger's just here, obviously, to remove its Altered Creation, and it does actually make a difference. Like I said, I usually don't advocate for it because lists just don't need it. We have 4 Quick Balls. This searches everything in the deck. You discard a card from your hand, search deck for a basic, searches all of these guys. 4 Ultra Ball, discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for a Pokemon. And these do actually play into the strategy of the deck, because you want to be thinning your hand down of bad cards for your Fusion Strike system to draw more. Ultra Ball also searches everything in the deck. 4 copies of VIP Battle Pass. You can only use this during your first turn, search deck for 2 basics, put them onto your bench. also gets these guys, but only on your first turn. VIP Battle Pass has been very good. I would definitely run 4 of those. You want to get that early VIP Battle Pass, and it feels quite good. And they're also good discard fodders later on. 2 copies of Cram-o-matic. You can only use it if you discard an item from your hand. Flip a coin if head, search your deck for a card. So use this to mainly search your stadium, your special energy, maybe a supporter, things that are a little bit harder to search that are the exact pieces. I've used it to search Power Tablet before, things like that. 1 copy of Computer Search, discard 2 from your hand, search your deck for a card, put it into your hand. I've seen people play Life Do and Dowsing Machine. Computer Search is definitely the A-spec to use in this deck because of VIP Battle Pass on turn 1, and later in the game getting Dimension Valley, your Fusion Strike Energy, or your buff needed to take a KO. 4 copies of Trainer Mail. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You can fit a trainer card you find there into your hand, shuffle the other cards back. Absolutely incredible card. Wouldn't run less than 4. Every deck should play 4. That's like a speed deck like this, except for Volcarona, obviously, because that plays like 20 energy. 1 copy of Battle Compressor, search your deck for up to 3 cards and discard them. I play 1 copy here because I want to thin out bad pieces, because obviously Quick Ball and Ultra Ball do that job, Cram-o-matic to some extent as well, do that job discarding pieces from your deck, like Battle VIP passes, or pieces from your hand, but a lot of times if you have too many dead pieces in your deck, it can become a liability. In addition with this, with Versus Seeker, Rescue Stretcher, and the supporters, along with the Pokemon, you can tutor things with Battle Compressor, such as Battle Compressoring away an Elesa for turn 1, a Guzma in a different part of the game, or getting rid of a Pokemon to Rescue Stretcher, like a Genesect. Primarily, you're going to be just getting rid of your 3 extra VIP passes. Usually you can get 1 off on turn 1, and then you get rid of the rest for after turn 1, because you don't need them. So 1 copy of Town Map, turn all your prize cards face up. I would play this in every Meloetta Genesect deck. If you prize energy, that can be a huge downer in your game. So you need to be able to, you know, when you prize the energy, like let's say you prize 2, you're going to have to take some very conservative KOs, something like gusting a Crobat and using a Power Tablet Muscle Band buffs to take a KO, and then you can, with Town Map used, you can target those energy out of your prizes. We played 1 copy of Pokemon Catcher. My justification for playing this card is because I pulled the secret Pokemon Catcher online, and I wanted to use it in a deck. Pokemon Catcher kind of works in a way where you get to have your cake and eat it too, for lack of a better words. You get to Elesa and Gust in the same turn. I wouldn't run any more than 1, because honestly, you don't want to have to burn this card on a turn where you like don't want to Gust and you're just knocking out the active. I've been forced to burn this card and just hope it gets Tails, but it's a good card. You want that option. I think 1 of works fine. If you get Tails, it's, you know, whatever. If you get Heads, it's the best card in the deck, so definitely worth playing. 4 copies of Power Tablet, boosts your Fusion Strike Pokemon by 30 damage. It's like a plus power in that way, where it just goes away. Electro Power would be more accurate for newer players, but plus power, I'm a 2010 player, so that's a little bit more at home with me. So you use this to boost your Meloetta's damage, obviously. You're doing 210 with 3 energy, that's pretty good, but with 1 Power Tablet, that's knocking out Vs. With 2 Power Tablets and a Muscle Band, then you're starting to hit like, you know, ADP. With 2 Power Tablets in general, you're hitting like 270, which is a pretty good number for tag teams. Think Zoro Ninja. Can't come up with the ones off the top of my head. Eggrow, I think, has 270. 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher, choose 1, put a Pokemon from your pile into your hand, or shuffle 3 from your pile into your deck. You see we only play 3 Meloetta. I've seen lists play 4. I can get why you'd want to play 4. I only ever want 2 in play, though, and I like having 1 in deck. I don't like having 2 in deck, and I don't like having to discard them early, so 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher plays into that. I have been bitten before by playing 3 Meloetta. I've prized 3 Meloetta in a game before and just had to, insta-scoop. But Rescue Stretcher, helps make sure you get your Meloetta back. Usually I only need like 3 or 4 Meloetta in a game, so Rescue Stretcher does that. Sometimes you can get Genesect back. That's why you don't play my original list, I played 2 copies of the Rescue Carrier just to get Meloetta's back, but opponents can knock out Genesect, and you want to be able to get your Genesects back in a pinch, so Rescue Stretcher is better. Also, shuffling them into deck thins your card a hand. It does bump up your deck a little on less consistency, but if you just want to Rescue Stretcher a Pokemon back in to burn a card, that's also a thing to shuffle it back in. 3 copies of Versus Seeker. Once again, you tutor your supporters out of your discard pile, allows you very much better access to Sparkle, Guzma, and Pokemon Ranger. I've played decks, again, that don't have Verse Seeker. I was a huge Volcarona lifer. This deck just wants to gust too much to not have Verse Seeker. It wants to use Elesa Sparkle on the exact turns, and it wants to use Ranger if need be. A lot of times you're going to have to burn cards early on to get your drawing going. If you don't get going early on the draws, you will never get going. 3 copies of Special Charge, shuffle 2 Special Energy from Shabelle into your deck. This is the biggest argument I could see in my list, is that you want to play 4 Special Charge. That's how you lose a lot of your games, that you don't play a 4th. If you were to cut any card from this list, I'd probably cut the Battle Compressor. I do love Battle Compressor, but it's probably the most cuttable card. If not, you could cut like Battle VIP Pass or a Muscle Band down, or maybe a Float Stone, but I would not. I don't know, I like Float Stone too much. 3 copies plays fine. You could definitely make room for a 4th, though, if you think you want it, and I kind of do. Shuffle Special Energy from each pile into your deck. Every time you get knocked out, you have to get these back. A lot of times you lose games if you just start like all 3 Special Charge in hand. That's like a huge whiff, and sometimes that can just cost the game if you have to discard like 2 of them just to draw out of a bad hand. So yeah, be very careful with Special Charge. It's the most valuable resource in the deck. 2 copies of Muscle Band. The attacks of the Pokemon this card is attached to 20 more. So it's with Power Tablet, a second boosting. You could play Choice Belt in here, now that I think about it. That wouldn't be bad, but I do also like getting the buff on tag teams like ADP, because with ADP you can do 2 Power Tablets and a Muscle Band with 3 fusions in play and get that 290 getting a KO on ADP, whereas Choice Belt does not offer that. I could see playing Choice Belt, though, because you could get easier KOs on Shadow Rider, so it's really up to you in that regard. I just think Muscle Band's pretty good. 2 copies means that you usually can do this buff twice. It's not as good as Power Tablet, but obviously it's in addition to Power Tablet, and, you know, God forbid your opponent doesn't knock out your Meloetta, you get to use it again, so it's pretty good. 3 copies of Float Stone. The retreat cost Pokemon's attached to has no retreat cost, or the Pokemon this card's attached to has no retreat cost. Gives you Genesect for retreat. I would not play, you know, you could potentially go down to 2, I guess, for a 4th Special Charge, but it's really rough if your Genesects get trapped, or if your opponent like Field Blowers both Float Stones off. Usually I'd bait Field Blowers with some of my decks, but you can't really do it with this deck, so you gotta just play the Float Stone to keep drawing. 4 copies of Dimension Valley. Each Psychic Pokemon in play costs colorless less. You could play 3. A lot of games you lose to only having 3. You see, I don't want to play any Field Blower in here. I don't think Field Blower is a good enough card. It's only niches bumping Cadex Swell, which most decks in the meta are not playing right now. Obviously, you can also bump, you know, people are going to argue that you could bump Silent Lab or Path of the Peak at your drawback, but similarly, Dimension Valley does the same job. If it's in hand in the place of a Field Blower, it also just bumps that stadium, and it gives you a bonus effect. I don't think Field Blower is great in here. I tried it in my first list and was not impressed. Dimension Valley makes your Psychic Pokemon's attacks cost less. That means you can use Melodious Echo for potentially like 300 damage for 1 energy. It's almost like Whimsicott Viv, but better because it's, you know, basic and a lot more aggressive. 4 copies of Fusion Strike Energy. This is just the energy for the deck that provides every type of energy attached to Fusion Strike, and then you prevent all abilities, which is actually kind of big. Because I believe you stop Vileplume, Burning Shadows, if I remember correctly with this. They're still going to win against you most of the time anyway, because they will just, you know, set up Fava and then just, you know, clear your energy out of game. And that's how you lose to a lot of decks that just play Fava. But it does stop some abilities from getting you Fusion Strike. Energy stops like Quick Shooting in Standard. It's not less relevant than Expanded. There's some other ones that I could, you know, think of if I spent half an hour thinking, but I'm not going to. This deck is not about thinking. This deck is about winning. It's a great tournament grinder deck. Try out my list. Maybe you have a list you like better. I've seen lists with like Custom Catcher and Novia Seeker in there before. I don't necessarily agree with that, but here's my list. Here's my take on it. It's one of the earlier takes on the deck. You're not going to see... Most lists don't look like mine because I didn't play this deck as much as I played Volcarona. But I was one of the first people on the ladder playing Meloetta Genesect, so it's kind of like uninfluenced by other people's opinions, more just my own work put into this deck. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, check out my other deck list profiles. Like Tabletop, I upload that too. Retro, and sometimes some FFA, sometimes some Cube. Check those out. Thank you guys for watching.